What would you say is the most important part of a PvP game? Some may say the direct combat options themselves, as how are you supposed to properly engage in battle with unsatisfying tools? Others may point to other systems, like movement, as good traversal can often make the game fun to play without there being another person in sight. However, I feel something that goes almost unnoticed yet is so integral to most modern PvP games are objectives. A game is nothing without structure, as while kicking around a ball can be somewhat fun but eventually tiresome. Add 2 nets, and you've got yourself an international phenomenon. Today, I'd like to look at a couple of objective types in the FPS genre specifically, and how certain objectives shape the game, as well as their strengths and weaknesses. But before we can do that, let's look at what happens when you just make the objective simply kill the other players. Deathmatch is theoretically the game in its purest form, as there's nothing but action, and whichever team gets the most kills ends up winning. Simple as that. However, when you make the game just shooting people, a lot of problems tend to emerge. First of all, if the win condition is purely tied to who got the most kills, it leads to people chasing said kills in very cheap ways. Camping is always a hated strategy, and if there's nothing else to chase in a match, it's an inevitability. Because why would you risk your life by going throughout a map to search for a kill you might get, when you can just hide in a corner and sneak attack a poor sap who tried to play the game in an earnest way? Another main problem is that there's no proper map flow, as nothing but potential kills is guiding the player to try to explore different spots, which just leads to fights over the best spots to just sit out and get easier kills. Not to mention the whole only contributing through kills thing leaves newer players out to dry, as they will get farmed by the enemy team and mainly be a liability. And modifiers like match timers and permadeath don't really solve anything, as the former enables the team getting 1 kill and then camping for the rest of the match, and the latter makes both teams risk averse, leading to more defensive play. However, Deathmatch as a game mode isn't completely beyond saving, as instead of throwing out the concept entirely, we could add a soft objective of sorts. What if we made it so that active play, instead of leading you to die more easily, led to you getting kills more easily? This is where map pickups come into play. Now I know what some of you might say, hey, that's not an actual objective. Maybe not in terms of a straight win condition, but considering the power some of the pickups in arena shooters can give players, they might as well be. This very nature of being a reason to go somewhere other than a hidey hole is also the first major advantage of map pickups, as the game can still have a deathmatch feel, while also giving ample reason to go around the map. Need to heal? Go somewhere else. Need ammunition? Go somewhere else. Want the best weapon? Go somewhere else and prepare to fight whoever had the same idea as you. That's another cool part about map pickups. They add a new whole level of power to the game without making it unbalanced. The power weapons in Halo are a perfect example of this. They give major advantages to players like the rocket launcher's easy one-shot kills, or the sniper rifle's unmatched range, but are often in highly contested parts of the map and have limited ammo compared to the basic weapons that also reside in the map. You get a power fantasy, but you have to earn it before you can start your rampage. Something else to be praised about the map pickup soft objective is how much freedom it gives the unique map types, as arena shooter maps often have some very experimental map designs, with Bungie-era Halo once again being an amazing example of this. Not to mention, this is the game type that often has the most special elements, like teleporters or jump pads. To round things out with advantages of the pickup system, it further emphasizes map knowledge as a skill by directly giving you an advantage for knowing where all the items on the map are, as well as your timing so you can get them again. However, this is also exactly where the problems with pickups as a soft objective start to emerge. The skill gap with pickups is often brutal, as experienced players will be able to farm people newer to the game even harder with knowledge of where the best items are, and it's hard to find out where the map location of the rocket launcher is when the only consistent location it has is in the enemy's hand. This also leads to another potential problem, which is snowballing. In any game with resources, the rich get richer. And if map timings aren't properly tuned well, it could result in one player or team just hoarding the best items after they only win one engagement for it. The most egregious example of this is Halo 2, where not only can weapons not respawn until the ammo has exhausted, but the energy source is infinite ammo, meaning you're stuck with a monster with an insta-kill melee weapon roaming the map until they get caught out of position or face the wrong end of a shotgun. Combine this with the fact the whole weapon sandbox has to be built around pickups, and there's a reason a soft objective hasn't been popular for years now, at least on pure deathmatch formats, as battle royales are still thriving with this style. But let's drop the concept of deathmatch entirely. How about a real objective? A classic, tried and true method to get people to do something that isn't just killing people. Something like capture the flag. Now there's a true objective, and quite the engaging one at that. Capture the flag is a staple mode for a reason, as not only is it simple to understand, but it's a moving objective that requires proper map knowledge and maneuvering to take. Another major benefit the flag has is allowing a lot of different playstyles in a match. Of course, there's flag runners, but there's also people who contribute by making space to capture said flag, or defend the runner as they're getting out. It also applies to the defensive flag, as people can guard the flag directly, or try to take down anyone that gets the objective, and hold the area where the drop flag is so it can return back to the base. However, this is also where the flaws of CTF as a game mode start, as often defensive play is more powerful than offensive play, leading to a common problem of double defending, the very thing we sought to destroy using objectives. The second major problem of CTF is that without timer play, games will often last either way too long with the whole double defending thing, or if teams are unbalanced, way too short, as a skilled flagger could just speedrun the game. Again, this type of mode is also becoming a lot less common, so we've still got some space to improve. What if instead of trying to get into an enemy's base to grab their flag and get to yours, you just capture the base outright? This leads to basic attack and defend game modes, in which usually an attacking team tries to capture certain points in the map, while a defending team tries to stop them. Real complicated, I know. But that's the great part of the mode. Once again, it's very easy to understand, and unlike capture the flag, anyone can properly contribute. It doesn't matter how good you move or shoot with a gun, any new player can just stand on a point and get the team closer to victory. Speaking of being easy to understand, that leads to another advantage of this game type: clear, defined roles. No need for double defending, as you have one team meant to attack a point and the other to defend it. Again, very intuitive, and often leads to proper map flow, as attacking teams will often try to claim power positions before going for a main push. That is, if they're competent. But once again, this objective is not without flaws. As exceptional as staying on a specific point is, it's not really too engaging, as there's nothing really to move, nor is there any interesting interactions with the player. Hence why sometimes teams lose because they forgot the objective they were fighting over. The second and bigger problem of the two is asymmetry. Due to map design, it's often inevitable that one team will have an advantage over another, but it depends on the quality of the map if that advantage is unnoticeable or egregious. But things don't have to be this way. What if the control point wasn't owned by anyone at the start? King of the Hail, or any other similar game mode with neutral control points, shares all the advantages that its asymmetrical counterpart has. Since it is operating under the same objective system, anyone can contribute, even more tangibly as both teams have to contend the point at the start. There are also clear roles for attacking and defending teams, but unlike the stability of attack and defend, King of the Hill is a lot more dynamic, as whoever controls the point becomes the defending team, and whoever doesn't have it plays the role of the attacker. But again, like the previously mentioned attack and defend roles, the stack objective can often be a bit boring to some. So what would happen if the control point moved? Introducing Payload, which is only really prevalent in class-based shooters, but the strengths it has are immediately evident. Once again, it's an accessible objective. Stand on it, and you contribute. But unlike the previous control point moves, the Payload will move throughout the map, making it a lot more active to contest, as no longer is a fight on one stack point. Instead, fights will be constantly moving, and certain parts of the map will be easier or harder to contest, with ramps making the cart passively move forwards or backwards. A feature that's unfortunately stayed in the original game mode, because apparently the game industry is allergic from growing from TF2. This may sound all well and good, but no game mode is safe from some flaws, Payload included. Asymmetry is back at play again, so some semblance of an imbalance between attackers and defenders is at play. But this pales in comparison to a true downside of the Payload game type, which is how the Payload itself alters map design. Since you need a clear line to push the objective through, it often results in some map design compromises, which most obviously manifests as egregious sightlines. Some maps are better at others in mitigating this, but even some of the best maps of the genre still end up having some ridiculous sniper angles. So the game mode gets nerfed often by the size of what needs to be transported. How about if the bomb was a lot smaller then? This takes us to Bomb Defusal, which is another attack defense centered game, but this time with an entirely different win-loss condition. Instead of merely standing on a point to capture it and win, the attackers must plant a bomb on a specific site and defend it long enough so it goes off. Meanwhile, the defenders must prevent the plant from happening in the first place, or defuse it. This mode provides a uniquely high tension compared to the previously mentioned modes, as the race against the clock is a lot more apparent, making this mode perfect for more round-based games. It's also got the dynamic nature of King of the Hill, as attacking and defending roles get switched once a bomb is placed down, as the defenders are put under more pressure to invade the site and successfully land a defuse. One more thing this mode uniquely has over anything else I'll mention is the strategy ending up trumping mechanics. Sure, you can win by just killing the enemy team, but it's possible to win the match even if your team has died on attack, as if you stall long enough so the bomb can't be defused, you can still win by detonation. This also applies to defenders, as a ninja defuse can make an enemy player's mechanics irrelevant. Combine that with the usual complex maps and economy management that games with this mode usually come packaged with, and you'll find out why they're called tactical shooters. That being said, all this strategy and tension still has a price tag. Firstly, you need a lot of specific features for the mode to function properly, such as permadeath and a low time to kill. Otherwise, a lot of the positive elements get removed. Another problem is that, like with Capture the Flag, only one person really gets to engage with the objective until it's planted, which is worse considering an incompetent bomb carrier can ruin the round for the whole attacking team. And like with every other attack and defend based game mode, it's asymmetrical, which I'm not going to repeat the downsides of. So that's the base of most common objective types in FPS games. However, we're still not done yet, because while these modes are pretty basic on their own, things start to get a little interesting when developers start to move outside of convention and mix and match parts of specific objectives. For example, item pickups are merely a soft objective and can be slotted into almost any game type, so it's actually seen a lot more use outside the corpse of the arena shooter genre or the plague of the battle royale. Team Fortress 2 and hero shooters in general make frequent use of it. As TF2 has ammo and health pickups, Overwatch and Marvel Rivals simplify by just having health packs, and even Valorant chooses to scatter orbs around the map that charge your ultimate upon pickup, at the cost of potentially leaking your location. Speaking of Team Fortress 2, it actually has a lot of unique objective combinations, the most notable being Payload Race. It combines the dynamics of CTF with the objective of Payload, with the goal being to push the payload into the enemy base while stopping the opponent from doing the same. That being said, map quality for actually playing the objective varies, with Nightfall being a very high quality map with unique overtime mechanic and High Tower being treated like Team Deathmatch, since there's no time limit and capturing the point is a Herculean task. Overall, despite the game being less popular than it used to be due to TF2's highly flawed matchmaking system, I'd say Payload Race was a successful experiment. Overwatch took after its approach of combining Payload with other game modes, but toned down the experimental factor, simply putting a control point before a payload. And despite the simplicity, it actually works very well, with many of Overwatch's most beloved maps falling in this mode, the best example being King's Row. There's a lot more examples of games doing their own thing with objective types, but something I'd like to see a game do is take it to the extreme. What if almost every objective type I mentioned up to this point was used in a single game mode? What would that look like? Well, we don't have to wonder about it. because it's real. It's called Deadlock. Like I said, this game implements a quite frankly unreal number of objective types. There are static NPCs that need to be attacked on each lane with guardians and walkers that are invincible unless you stand in their range like a control point. There's troopers that need to be pushed up by eliminating enemy troopers like a payload. There's a neutral CTF mechanic that grants many souls for successfully capturing that can be intercepted by the enemy team. And a mid-boss that acts as a DPS check while needing to stand near it. For less flashy soft objectives, there's power-ups every 5 minutes, boxes around the map, and slot machines that provide a few buffs. The game is teeming with complexity, as proper soul farming requires you to engage with multiple soft objectives, by clearing trips and then going off-road to kill neutral enemies or simply break some boxes. And that's just farming. For actual objectives, you have to manage 3 separate lanes to pressure enemy stationaries, while also not overextending so you don't get caught out and your team is a man down. This gives Deadlock immense strategic depth, as players must juggle the priority of certain objectives, as well as keeping track of their teammates' numbers, strength, and health to see if a fight is worth joining in on. As while losing a locker would be a devastating loss sometimes, it might be necessary in order to secure a spirit urn, which can single-handedly turn around games or become the final nail in the coffin for the enemy team. But as I've stated over and over again in previous segments, even this heavily layered approach to objectives has a major cost, which lies in its own complexity that I've praised. While it's great for experienced players, it's also a massive barrier to entry for newer players, as most people won't be able to intuit proper objective priority or immediately figure out why the walkers aren't taking as much damage with heavy trial and error. Combined out of the game's many hard-to-learn features, and Deadlock is quite the intimidating game to get into. That being said, like with many masterfully designed games that are a bit tricky to get into, if you manage to hop the initial hurdle, you'll find yourself some incredibly rewarding gameplay, and Deadlock will actually reward you for paying attention to the objective, both in the vanity of stats and the glory of victory. Which leads me to my final point. Objectives should be emphasized. In a lot of games, the general player base will fixate on so many other aspects of the game, yet continue to turn a blind eye to the most important part, which is how you win the game in the first place. It's the reason C9 is a term in competitive Overwatch, as it's all too common that people forget the payload exists, which is in part due to the fact the game doesn't give you any sort of encouragement to do your job. The scoreboard will show how much damage you've done, enemies you've vaguely shot before they die, healing you've done, and damage mitigated, and yet, there's no stat for doing a thing that wins the game. Meanwhile, Valve had the common sense to make objective damage and souls gain important stats to consider who gets the MVP slot, encouraging the player to do something that isn't just try to kill another person. And you can apply this to so many other games to see if the games properly remind you what your actual mission is. Counter-Strike gives you money for planting and defusing bombs. Halo gives objectives the highest leaderboard standing. Titanfall gives you faster access to a Titan. So on and so forth. Basically, give more incentive to play an objective besides making it just a win condition. And one more thing. Make sure you choose the right objectives for your game. Payload is fantastic in a TF2 lobby with 12v12, but in Overwatch and Marvel Rivals 6v6, it doesn't feel right. The team fights don't really typically flow well off the cart. However, with King of the Hill, the game feels a lot better. Essentially, take a look at the flow of the game and decide which objective will do the job. Because if you have the best gunplay in the industry and super satisfying traversal options, but just not that fun to win the game, what's even the point of playing it? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.